That is a wrap on 2 streaming series. One unceremoniously dumped en masse onto its platform for its eager fans, the other released weekly over the course of the past 2 months to keep its viewers hooked, both of which were significant keystones in the television conversational zeitgeist in previous years. Both of them were acclaimed for their standout work in the genre upon their inception, both entirely a chore for me to sit through at times. Wait, no, that can't be right. I like The Boys. I like The Bear. Both of them have delivered stellar seasons of television and phenomenal episodes to me in years past. What's happening here? Allow me to tell you, me from 10 seconds ago. What's happening is that both shows have just released what I am coining as Treadmill Seasons. What are Treadmill Seasons, you ask? Treadmill Seasons are seasons of a show that are just kind of there. They're there, and they're working, and they're completing the motions, and yes, they are running, but they aren't really going anywhere, are they? Or at least they're not going anywhere that's been thematically or emotionally satisfying to me as a viewer. And sure, maybe that's a nitpicky bar for me to have set, but it's my bar and I'll set it wherever I please. Now, if you're hearing this term treadmill season for the first time, you might be unfamiliar, and I'll assume that you are hearing it for the first time because I think I just created this term. If I didn't create this term, please flame me in the comment section about how I'm a fraud and how I have stolen valor for this term that some other guy came up with in an IndieWire article in 2018. Anyway, to explain and belabor my point, I'm going to bring up a few things from The Bear and a lot of things from The Boys that turn these shows from things I was excited to tune into to watch each week into chores I had to check off my to-do list by the second half of their seasons. The Boys being the much greater offender here, but if I'm being honest, both were each rather offensive at certain points. We'll start off with the small fry, The Bear, the more minor of my 2 indictments, but an indictment nonetheless, on one count of running in place and trying to hide that fact for the better part of a season. I mean, the first half of this season is most of the proof you need, is it not? Just look at it. I'm being assaulted, against my will, mind you, by what seems to be an unending supply of Fack brothers and relatives. It is relentless and it exhausts me. Their presence on screen literally sucks the air out of the room and the momentum out of every episode. And for this season, with what little good pacing it does manage to achieve, it really shouldn't be squandering that every 13 minutes with an extended edition conversation with a Fack that feels like it goes on 5 times longer than it has any right to. They are really not that funny. To make a food analogy with this cooking show, I would equate the Facts to truffle flavor. It's great if I get a whiff or a hint of it occasionally, if it's hiding in a dish or an episode and I discover it now and then, but if it's a mainstay and a feature I can't avoid, I'm just exhausted and I want to go home. At least with truffle, I can stop eating though. With the Facts, I can't unmake the episode or unwrite their characters. And speaking of writing, I acknowledge that the Facts get screen time because one of them is an executive producer. Like, I get that. But for the love of God, curb this man's ego or find a better way to placate him because these scenes are weighing down your show like a cannon that's been tied to a mutineering pirate that's been thrown overboard. And I'm not just complaining about the Facts here. They are just simply the biggest, loudest, most obvious, and most obnoxious symptom of the Bear's treadmill problem. I have many others. For instance, it takes us like 3 goddamn episodes to move ahead 1 day from where season 2 left off. And most of these episodes are montages also. In fact, The Bear seems to whip out a montage just as frequently as The Boys has Anthony Starr facially express rapid fire confusingly as Homelander. But I digress, we'll get to that series soon. On top of the endless Fack and montage supply that comprises an unhealthy portion of The Bear Season 3's plate, there's also just a huge removal of a main dramatic throughline, or at least not nearly enough time spent on it. The central issue presented in Season 3 can be stated as Carmy is operating his fancy restaurant at a loss, both in terms of actual money and in terms of emotional connection to those around him. But we get to actually see the drama of this maybe once per episode, twice if we're lucky. Complaints about the menu or meetings or how to make money, they're there, but they're not really given any time to breathe. There's a surface level conversation about legacy and references to another fancy restaurant's closure, but they're about as close as we get to an actual exploration of why Carmy is doing this, and this is the case for so much of the season. And even these are very simple scenes that likely could have been intuited by any viewer while they were being subjected to another long take about Fack family haunts. You know what's actually resonant this season? The through line of the beef window, bringing in money and not being treated properly. That little subplot that gets next to no attention was as interesting to me as anything else. It was interesting because it drew attention to the growing gap between what the restaurant wants to be and what it needs to be to survive. It highlighted the difference between tangible, unsexy success and ethereal, lofty dreams and ambitions. But, like I said, we don't get much of that. Another high point for me was actually Io's directorial episode, the one focusing on Tina and her search for work, even though it didn't advance the story of the restaurant in the present day very much. And I know what you're thinking, hey, I like that episode too. I bet you're also thinking that I'm a hypocrite for complimenting something that would seemingly contribute to my Treadmill Season accusations. But you see, that's the secret. Tina's episode, this sort of non-plot-centric stuff, this emotional stuff, this character piece, that's what Treadmill Seasons really lack. Because think about it. Treadmills are work. They're a run just like a trail is. Your legs stride the same and they get just as tired. They do about the same work, more or less. But you haven't gone anywhere on a treadmill. Yes, you ran the distance, but you didn't see anything or gain any new experiences. You're in the same spot that you were. You advanced on the belt, but with the world around you unchanged and seen in the same perspective the entire way through. Treadmill Seasons have plots that move along, slowly at that, but what they're truly missing is development of characters and explorations of core ideas. Tina's episode gives us a really, really good taste of her character, as well as several others. It's satisfying emotionally to see her finally find a home at the Beef, and to see Mikey be that person to finally be human with her and take her into the fold while he's folding his napkins. The satisfaction comes not from some advancement of the story or twist in the narrative, but from the connection and empathy we build with Tina over the course of this episode. It comes from her getting an ending that we know she'll be happy with after we watch her struggle for so long. It comes from us getting a bit more color into Mikey as a character. It comes from these flavors of other characters we get small samples of in their time from before the show. Guess what? Fak isn't unbearable here, because his time on screen is for characterization and flavor and texture to an emotional story, not for some stupid, unfunny bit that just goes on far too long. So there's my case against the bear and how it found itself on the treadmill. Now onto the boys, which has been trying to hide the fact that it's been on a treadmill for the majority of its existence, surviving on nuggets of plot development and story advancement while its characters relearn the same lessons and rehash the same arguments again and again and again to pad that runtime. Genuinely an interesting case where almost every character in the show seems to have gotten aggressively stupider in some way or another since the series started. The show has slowly shifted from what's an interesting story we can tell that deconstructs the idea of superheroes in a gripping way while also having something meaningful to say about the world into how can we make something disgusting and traumatize Huey and also just get a direct feed from the Republican National Convention straight into the episode and pass it off as satire that we wrote ourselves. Because of this, we've moved away from things people actually were invested in within this show. Homelander's propensity to snap at any moment and that terrifying factor where we might think he's going to do something completely unpredictable or cold or calculating and vile has been replaced by us thinking, oh, okay, so when's he going to laser this guy? Or, him just inexplicably doing nothing when a problem is presented to him because of reasons. We've also moved away from any interesting commentary about double motives and self-serving leaders that this show initially criticized. Instead, it's just a paint job on a Republican news event from 2 years ago thrown in so that the show can claim it's still topical between the opportunities it takes to do the next gross thing that they have on their to-do list. I understand the satire is intended to be relatively heavy-handed and that somehow some people still manage to miss it, but can we try a little? I mean, there isn't even any point to it or any sort of thematic idea behind the parts of life that they parody anymore. There's no thread that links the specific items they've chosen to satire. They don't connect to a larger idea or a message in any real way. The jokes and lampoonings of reality are nothing more than surface level exercises in recognition. So we're running in place. What's changed between where Season 3 stopped and Season 4 just finished? Let's see. Homelander got the public goodwill and seems to have a blank check to act however he wants. We already did that. Ryan's run away and seems liable to turn full villain if we don't course correct soon. We did that already too. Butcher's dying, but he's going out fighting. Yep, did that in Season 3. Huey's on solid footing with Annie after having the worst 10 episodes of his life. Also last season. Yep, Yeah, that's actually every season. Oh, hey, Frenchie and Kimiko, we did something. Something happened, and characters evolved. Woohoo! Oh, yes, and the one thing that's been universally praised about this season that I haven't mentioned, A-Train. Yes! And why is it that this plot thread in particular was praised? Because there was characterization and thematic exploration to go along with it. A-Train's slow ascent from pure villain to potential hero was really fun to watch, particularly this season. Watching the reluctance and hesitance slip away this season was great. It was nice to root for. It felt real when he talked about that look he got from the kid when he saved MM. It felt like the show had something that it wanted to say. It felt like it was a comment and a proposal about the idea of doing good and about redemption and about what really matters and the true meaning of heroism. But of course, that was 5 minutes. That's small potatoes compared to the amount of screen time dedicated to ripping Huey this year. And I do give the boys some credit. The isolated bottle emotional episode was really good too, much like the bear. Simon Pegg in this episode was a standout, and the entire cast in this plotline was astounding. I really loved this part of the season. It was gross and, as contractually obliged, awful for Huey, but it was meaningful too. It had commentary about saying goodbye and about holding on. It showed us a unique way of facing death and going out on your own terms in a way that was distinct to this show's world. It gave us parallels to a lot of real-life scenarios that many of us have no doubt been forced to go through. It was real and vulnerable and emotional and worked because of that. It wasn't just a plot that happened or a parody that was made, which is why I enjoyed it so much more than the rest of this season. Of course, there's a lot I disliked too. The Tech Night episode probably cost me a good 20 IQ points and gave me the same brain tumor worm that Billy Butcher has. The satire political dialogue this season was about as refined as Flint, Michigan tap water. The increasing ineptitude of the antagonists of the show can also be quite tiring, as it seems to constantly outdo itself. By the finale, I was actually on the verge of yelling at my phone in the middle of my flight at Homelander. Why aren't you stopping Ryan from leaving? Why? What is the reason? And then there's like dozens of plot threads that just are completely dropped every episode without any further explanation. I guess they ran out of time because they dedicated too much screen time to weird gross shit just to try to shock us and talk about that in Oppressor. I mean, what's up with Ashley? How's she doing? That seemed to be a bit of a tremendously large cliffhanger. How did the Gen V kids get involved in this? Does Homelander want to, follow up on his son at all? Is Firecracker dying, or is that purely a one-off for Homelander to belittle her? Also, I generally don't love the handling of our resident smart character Sage here. She kinda just shows up and says, all according to plan. Yeah, sure, but I saw the plan go down with my own eyes, and it really didn't feel that smart. I saw everything. You surely could not have known everything would happen in those ways. And even if you did, which you didn't, why was this the plan? This kind of just feels like someone cooked it up on a second pass through the script, then they remembered Sage is involved, so they threw her saying this in at the end. Could we have gotten something to actually show us how intricately Sage weaved this web? Oh, and on the notes of weaving webs, No, I will not. So that's my indictment of the 2 seasons. I levy the accusation of each show forcing the viewer onto the treadmill, dangling the carrot of true development and change and meaning just out of our reach for the majority of their seasons. They don't truly take us anywhere substantial and spend most of their time running in place without true purpose or destination in mind. They obfuscate this objective and just draw out the journey and inflate themselves in the process. The boys here being the more severe offender than the bear, however. I give the boys season 4 a 2 out of 5, and I give the bear season 3 a 3 out of 5. Until next time.